Chapter 773. Catching up. It took some time for the members of the cohort to digest Neff's story. Sunny, especially, felt like she did not tell them even a fraction of what had happened to her. But then again, was it even possible to describe 2 years of never-ending struggle for survival with just a few words, not even considering the things that Changing Star might have wished to keep to herself? And he was sure that there were plenty. She would have had trouble describing even the things that she wanted to share. It was going to take time. As for the actual secrets, while he was dismayed and uneasy, Sunny himself was known to keep a lot of things close to his chest. More than that, they all had to be cautious about what they said. The room provided to Nephi's by the Academy might have been safe, but that did not mean that it was not monitored. That was the reason why both Effie and Kai remained mostly silent, despite the fact that they clearly had a lot of questions. Unlike Sunny, they did not possess a good understanding of Changing Star's aspect in current class. All they knew was that she possessed a divine aspect, just like Sunny and Mordred did. Eventually, Cassie broke the silence. "It is fine. Now that you are back, everything is going to be fine." She paused and then added somberly, "However, our current situation is very delicate." Nephi's looked at her and frowned, the white sparks in her eyes becoming a little brighter. "Were there any complications after you returned from the Forgotten Shore?" She was alluding to Castor, the great clans, and the sovereigns that wished her dead, of course. Sunny finally spoke. "Not immediately, but we ran into some trouble not long before venturing into the second nightmare." Changing Star's frown deepened. "Can you tell me what exactly happened?" He shrugged. "I can, but we'll get you up to speed later in a more private setting. For now, let's just say that there was supposed to be a negotiation with the representatives of the great clan Valor today, which fell through for obvious reasons." Sunny paused for a moment and then added, "Other than that, the important things to know are, let me think actually. I am a renowned academic and an instructor at the Academy now. Cassie leads the Fire Keepers. Oh, Fire Keepers are the Forgotten Shore survivors whom you saw outside. They are basically your groupies. Right, you are famous now. Very, very famous. There is even a movie about you, with a very well-received romantic subplot. What else? We have a flying ship and an exclusive citadel in the dream realm. Effie moved in with me. Night and Gale disbanded." Neff's face slowly turned paler and paler. Finally, she couldn't take it anymore and raised a hand. Wait, what, Kai, is this true? Night and Gale disbanded." Sunny glanced at her darkly. "Really, that is your first question?" Kai, meanwhile, looked down in embarrassment. Yes, I am sorry to say this, but Gale and I decided to go our separate ways. It is for the best. My status as a master would have just dragged him down, especially because my aspect evolved after I killed that dragon." Nephi's blinked. A dragon?" Sunny grinned. "Oh yes, Kai killed a transcendent dragon. Effie and I killed a couple of saints too. I even killed the same one twice. First time before I was beheaded, the second time after." Changing Star slowly raised her second hand and grabbed her head. I think I need a moment. Wait, can you start from the beginning?" A strange expression suddenly appeared on her face. "And did you say something about a movie with a romantic subplot? What?" Sunny had a bit of fun filling Nephi's in on what had been going on with the four of them and the waking world during her absence. There was a lot of ground to cover, but he chose only the juiciest moments. Like falling into a bottomless abyss for a month straight on top of a dead demon, being burned by divine flames, and discovering an ancient tower left behind by a mysterious deity. Or finding out that Effie was confined to a wheelchair in the waking world, only to see her leave it behind after conquering the second nightmare. Or slaying a corrupted monster to get their hands on a shipwrecked flying vessel and repair it. or watching two saints obliterate an entire island as they fought to the death. The list went on and on. After a while, Neff weakly waved her hand. I think I need a break. Can you guys give me a few minutes?" By then, it was already late into the night. It was dark outside the window, with only pale moonlight and powerful beams of defense turrets illuminating the black sky. Sunny grew silent, then shrugged. "Sure, you need some rest anyway. We can continue in the morning. The government should be ready to release you by then, too. Have you thought about where you want to go? Staying here in the academy is an option too, of course." He thought for a few moments, and then added awkwardly, I feel stupid asking this, but do you have a place to stay? Do you have money? Are there people we need to contact? What is your clan's situation exactly?" Nephis absent-mindedly touched her neck, then answered in a neutral tone. "There is a manor. That is pretty much the only property the clan has left. Everything else was liquidated and sold a long time ago. I sealed it before leaving for the first nightmare, so it should have remained empty for the last 3 years. It's hard to say what state it's in." She lingered for a moment and then added, "I should have a bit of money left, and there are no people. Most of our retainers fled over the years, and the rest left after my grandmother passed away. That was not too long before my nightmare, too. I'll have to think about what to do now." Sunny looked at her and then frowned a little. "What about safety? Aren't you concerned about, your previous issues?" Nephis remained silent for a long time, then shook her head. "I don't think anyone will try to kill me anytime soon." He glanced at her with dark curiosity. "Really? Why? Some people weren't shy about it before." Changing Star looked at him and then said evenly, "Because now I am not easily killed." She wasn't wrong. As the members of the cohort left the room to give Nephis time to rest, Sunny was deep in thought. Changing Star was an ascended tyrant now. Killing her was much harder than assassinating a mundane child that was protected only by the dwindling forces of a fallen clan, especially due to the nature of her powers. In fact, short of sending a saint to do the job, nothing the great clans could throw at her would work. Saints were a precious resource, however, and more than that, rare enough to make their movements almost impossible to hide. Unless the sovereigns were ready to abandon all pretenses of civility, there was no easy way to get rid of Nephis anymore. She had ensured that by becoming a master directly. The situation had fundamentally changed. And that was not even accounting for the tremendous public outcry that would result from something like that ever coming to light. Whether the great clans wanted to admit it or not, they were still tied to the rest of humanity. All awakened came from mundane humans, after all. Losing the support of the masses would threaten the very base of the power that the sovereigns enjoyed. Come to think of it, getting rid of Sunny was almost equally as hard. He doubted that any master, with the exception of maybe direct children of Anvil of Valor, would be able to pose a serious threat to him. There were 2 more great clans to consider, of course, but he doubted that any scion of Song or Night was more dangerous than the Princess of War, Morgan. So what did it all mean? It meant that their position in the negotiations had vastly improved. They could exert much more pressure on Valor and achieve much better results. That was if Nephis did not do anything extreme, of course, which she was more than capable of doing, considering her searing hatred for the 3 sovereigns. After hesitating for a bit, Sunny walked over to Cassie, leaned on the wall near her, and asked quietly, "What do you think she will do?" The blind girl understood his meaning without having to specify what exactly the question was about. Perhaps she was considering the same issue. Cassie lingered for a moment, then said quietly, "Negotiate." Sunny barely suppressed a chuckle. "Negotiate? Are we talking about the same Nephis? Do you know how much she despises the great clans? What her insane ambitions are? Somehow, I feel that 2 years of barely clinging to life in the dream realm did nothing to blunt her resolve. If anything, I think that it has only been sharpened." The blind girl remained silent for a while, then sighed. "I think so too. However, there is little choice. She is still too weak to face the enemy directly. It is because her resolve remains the same that she will have to make herself flexible." A dark expression appeared on Sunny's face. "When have you ever known Neff to be flexible?" Cassie turned her head slightly, facing him. Her expression was somber and serious. "Neff can be whatever she needs to be to achieve her goals. Same as you, don't forget that." What was that supposed to mean? Sunny grimaced, then looked away. After a while he asked in a grim tone, "So where does it leave us?" Whether he wanted it or not, he was tied to Nephi's. That bond was strong but not unbreakable. If he really wanted to, he could attempt to destroy it. He could kill her. He could run away. He could try to find a more obscure method. However, Sunny did not know if he was willing to pay the price of destroying their bond. At least not until he saw a sign that Changing Star was willing to wield her power as his master, not just possess it. Unless she did, he was only a slave in name. Although reluctantly, Sunny was barely able to tolerate such an arrangement. Having a master that was unwilling to exercise her power was even beneficial to him, since it protected him from others who would want to abuse that power, like Mordred, for example. If his position as Neff's shadow ever gained substance due to her actions, however, then one of them was going to have to die. That Sunny was certain of. He wouldn't hold anything back to make sure that he was the one left standing in the end as well. But that moment had not yet come, and hopefully it was never going to. So for now, his future was doomed to be influenced by the decisions Nephi's made. The blind girl sighed. "Where does it leave us? Even I don't know. Everything is changing, Sunny, and all we can do is try to change as fast as it does. That is the only way to keep ourselves and those we care about safe from the world." Sunny looked at Cassie, trying to understand the implications hidden in her words. Then he said in a grim tone, "Who's going to keep the world safe from us?" The next day, a small convoy of PTVs left the academy grounds. Most of them carried the Fire Keepers, while the members of the cohort were seated together in one of the vehicles. For obvious reasons, neither Sunny nor Effie knew how to drive. Cassie was unable to steer a PTV as well. So, in a strange turn of events, Ascended Nightingale, a famous idol and global celebrity, ended up playing the role of the chauffeur. Kai and Sunny sat in the front, while the three young women remained at the back of the vehicle. As the convoy moved through the streets of the city, they briefly explained the more sensitive details of the cohort's current situation to Nephi's. The column of PTVs was headed toward a remote district where Immortal Flame's sealed manor was situated. It was decided that the Fire Keepers would establish their Waking World headquarters there. At some point, however, a single vehicle quietly separated from the convoy and dove into a high-speed tunnel, unnoticed. Soon, it appeared in a peaceful neighborhood full of beautiful terraces and parked near a gray two-story house with a cozy synthwood porch. Sunny left the PTV first and then stood silently for a few moments, waiting for others to do the same. Then he looked at Nephi's, cleared his throat and said awkwardly, "Welcome to my humble abode, I guess. It has designer lamps and a state-of-the-art refrigerator, among other things." After the five of them walked inside, Nephi's remained silent for a few moments as she looked around. Although her face was still and stoic as ever, Sunny could have sworn that he noticed a hint of curiosity reflected in her cold gray eyes. After a while she asked, "This is your home?" Due to her sheltered upbringing, Changing Star had probably never been in a normal residence. Strangely, she was someone who had only experienced living in upscale manors and squalid Dream Realm slums, with nothing in between. Still, Sunny was not discouraged. He grinned and nodded proudly. Yes, bought it fair and square, with the contribution points from my first research paper. I own this place. Nephi's hesitated. What happened to the walls? His smile dimmed a little. Nephi happened. Of course, he had long cleaned the mess that the huntress created after ascending. However, Sonny had been too preoccupied with other matters to enact proper repairs. As the result, the guest bedroom only had a flimsy curtain covering its irregular-shaped entrance, but no door. Maybe I should get to it. Sonny cleared his throat, then gestured at the living room section of the main space. Make yourself comfortable. I'll make us something to eat. As the cohort settled, he walked to the kitchen area and stood in front of the open refrigerator for some time, thinking. For some reason, Sonny had a strong desire to cook up something special. Nephi's must have been sick of eating monster meat for years, so. Finally, he produced a number of ingredients and laid them out on the cooking surface, then started the preparations. Fried rice should do the job. Omurus, do I have eggs? As he went about it, the discussion reached a poignant moment. Cassie was finishing describing the important details of the reason for their tense relationship with Clan Valor. And so, we accomplished our goal and ascended. However, that man, Mordred, he must have ascended as well. His clan doesn't know that yet, so their response was only mildly aggressive. Sky Tide of White Feather took most of the blame for his escape and the consequent death of Saint Cormac. That did not save us from all fallout, sadly. She paused and then added somberly. They have secretly captured 2 of the loyalist Forgotten Shore survivors. The rest of us took shelter in the Dream Realm. For the past 6 months, Sonny's contact in the government acted as an intermediary to arrange a peaceful negotiation. It seems that Valor is finally ready to talk, but they aim to recruit at least one of us into their clan. The blind girl sighed. The 4 of us are already a very important asset, but with the addition of the Firekeepers, our value is nothing short of tremendous. If they can't get all of us, they are determined to at least make sure that we don't pledge allegiance to their competitors. Of course, now that you are here, the situation has become even more fraught with tension. Valor will be much more motivated. Cassie smiled weakly, and then said in an apologetic tone, I'm sorry to have to burden you with all that right after you return. Nephi's remained silent for a few moments, then shook her head. No, you were right to inform me, thank you. A grim and thoughtful look appeared on her face. Sonny, meanwhile, listened to the conversation silently. He was darkly perplexed by the fact that his life had turned out in such a way that encountering words like loyalists, government contact, and allegiance in a casual conversation did not seem out of place. Effie, meanwhile, looked at Changing Star with curiosity and asked, I get what our problem with the great clans is. What's your problem with them? I thought that you, of all people, would have been chummy with the top legacy's princess. Nephi's looked at her without any amusement. They want me dead. The huntress blinked a couple of times. What, why? Changing Star shrugged. You'll have to ask them. Effie remained silent for a while, thinking. After some time, she frowned and asked, So was Castor? Nephi simply nodded. He was. Kai looked at them with confusion. He was what? Everyone turned to him, suddenly realizing that the archer was less informed about some of the darker secrets of what had happened on the Forgotten Shore than the rest of them. After a while, Effie shook her head. I mean, aren't you the walking lie detector? What do you think Castor was up to? Kai coughed. Oh, he was indeed a bit dishonest sometimes, but I just assumed that he was trying to hide his feeling for Lady Nephi's. At that moment, Sonny walked over carrying 7 plates. He held 2 in his hands, 2 more in shadowy limbs that played the role of a second pair of hands, balanced 2 on his forearms, and the 7th was swaying slightly on top of a tangible shadow that resembled a long tail. Placing a plate of delicious, steaming omurice in front of Kai, he said with a crooked grin. Oh, he had feelings for her for sure, the feelings of wishing to kill her to complete his mission. Sadly, he stumbled on me first. It was a sad thing indeed. If Sonny had not killed Castor, if Nephis had known in advance that slaying the Crimson Terror would force the Spire to seek another conduit, if Cassie's vision had been more detailed, well, there was no point in feeling regret now. What had been done was done. The current conversation just went to show that Kai's strange flaw, while useful, was also often detrimental and misleading. As Kai stared into the distance in stunned silence, Sonny placed the other plates on the table, pushed 3 of them toward Effie, dismissed the shadows, and landed on a soft armchair. Then he picked up his utensils, smelled the omurice, and let out a satisfied sigh. "What are you waiting for, fools? Dig in." The omurice disappeared from the plates with a speed that made Sonny a bit full of himself. He smiled proudly and then looked at Nephis. "So, what do you think about the mess we're in?" She put down her utensils, looked at the empty plate with a hint of regret, and then asked, "That Mordred, the rank of his aspect is the same as ours." Sonny nodded, prompting her to frown. While she thought, he reluctantly added, "He is also older and more powerful than us, and possesses more knowledge than anyone in the waking world should have. Other than that, he is, actually, I don't know what he is, I just feel that something is very wrong with that guy. Regardless, he is dead set on destroying Clan Valor. It is just hard to tell how he is going to go about accomplishing that goal." Changing Star remained silent for a few moments, then said evenly, "He is going to search for allies." Sonny's expression grew a little darker. "Mordred is not exactly a team player." Nephis slowly shook her head. "It doesn't matter. No matter how powerful he has become, it won't be enough to reach his goals. The enemy is too strong. Their power is too absolute." She did not say it, but from the grim expression on her face, Sonny could guess what Changing Star was thinking about. That she was in the exact same position. Which did not bode well. He grimaced. "So, do you think that we should expect to find the bastard on our doorstep one day? The enemy of my enemy and all that?" Sonny was not looking forward to meeting Mordred again, let alone getting entangled with him in any shape or form. As far as he was concerned, the Prince of Nothing would bring nothing but trouble. Nephis frowned, then said with uncertainty, "No, I doubt it." Well, if she was right, that was a relief. At that moment, Cassie deactivated her communicator and turned to face them. "The Firekeepers have reached the Immortal Flame Manor. They are putting on a show to make it seem like there are all kinds of activity going on inside. Hopefully, that is going to make most people think that you are there with them. You should not be bothered by anyone here for a while." She paused for a moment, then sighed. "But that is not going to last long. Maybe a week. The rest of us should not linger as well. It would be strange if Kai, Effie, and I are not seen at the manor. We will leave shortly and join the Firekeepers." Which would leave Sonny and Nephis alone. He did not know how to feel about that. Effie, meanwhile, glanced at the empty plates and said in a petulant tone, "I live here as well, you know." Cassie turned to her with a deadpan expression. "Not for the next week, you don't." As the huntress let out a sigh, the blind girl hesitated for a few seconds, and then said, "I'm also in contact with the government representatives and Clan Valor. They understand the pressure you are facing so soon after you return, so they are willing to be patient. For now. That will buy you a short buffer before they come knocking. Be ready to receive some requests for public appearances and so on in a week or two, as well as demands to resume the negotiations. We can stall for a time, but not forever." Nephis looked at her calmly, then asked, "What about Song and Night?" Cassie frowned. "Clan Song might try to get involved in the negotiations, but I don't expect them to be too forceful. They are in a more advantageous position than Valor right now, after all. As for the House of Night, they are remaining strangely passive these days, for some reason. Maybe they just know that they have less to offer than the other two great clans and don't want to bother. Sunny had a different explanation for why the Nightwalkers had less time to participate in the schemes of the two greater clans, but chose to remain silent. The information provided to him by Master Jet had been shared in confidence. Even if he wanted to, he couldn't go around spreading it. The blind girl sighed, then rose from her seat. Try to rest well during this week, Neff. Don't neglect your recovery. We know that you are strong, but no one is truly infallible. Perhaps none of us has experienced as much pain as you had in these past few years, but we faced our share, some more than others. She briefly faced Sunny, then turned away and lowered her head. So, we understand how precarious it is to go on as if nothing happened without giving the old wounds a chance to heal. Don't be stubborn and have some pity on yourself, for a change. Nephis looked at her. After a few moments, a pale smile appeared on her face. You don't have to lecture me, Cass. You are overestimating my resolve. I am more than willing to rest for a while. Happy, even. The words rest and happy hardly fit in the image of changing star they were accustomed to, but no one said anything. An ordeal like the one she had gone through was bound to change anyone, even someone as determined and unflinching as Nephis. Cassie smiled and then addressed Effie and Kai. Let's go then. There's a lot of work to be done at the manor. We need to renovate it a little and make some adjustments to convert it into a proper clan headquarters. Soon they said their goodbyes and left. The PTV came online and swiftly disappeared from view. Sunny and Nephis were left alone in the cozy gray house. He hesitated for a bit, and then looked at her with a bit of awkwardness. Well, make yourself at home, I guess. Actually, let me give you a tour. In one of the most upscale districts situated near the heart of the city, a fancy but not overly opulent restaurant was welcoming the first few visitors of the day. While some owners made a point of following the archaic traditions and hired human servers, this particular establishment was aimed at a mostly young audience. For that reason, a lot of things were automated and could be easily accessed through personal communicators of the patrons. The chefs were still human, of course. They were also true masters of their craft. Every ingredient used by them was natural as well, while some were even imported from other quadrants. The interior design was similarly luxurious, with natural wood visible everywhere. Authentic paintings from centuries past hung on the walls, protected by thick sheets of transparent alloy. Everything was expensive, stylish, and screamed of class. Such a restaurant, of course, was only accessible to citizens of the highest ranks who could afford to dine here. It was especially popular among young heirs of the city elite and had a reputation for being a prime spot for arranged dates and romantic occasions. Currently, a couple of such meetings were taking place inside, with wealthy young men and women going through the awkward motions of attending a blind date arranged for them by their families. Strangely, the most striking visitor of the famed restaurant sat alone, as if her date was running late. The young woman seemed to be in her mid-20s, but possessed elegance and grace that spoke of strange maturity. She was exquisitely beautiful, with a supple figure and flawless skin. The beauty was wearing a stylish red dress and a black leather jacket. A few tasteful pieces of jewelry adorned her fingers and delicate neck. Other female visitors of the restaurant couldn't help but feel exasperated by the fact that their dates seemed to be unable to stop stealing glances at the beautiful woman. The men, meanwhile, were all wondering what kind of a fool would keep such a belle waiting. If only they were in his place, they wouldn't be so tardy. Finally, the doors opened, and a new visitor came in. The young man looked around, scratched the back of his head, and then headed toward the table where the striking beauty sat alone. Sitting down, he smiled sheepishly and said, "Sorry for being late. I hope you did not have to wait too long." The young woman smiled politely, revealing her pearly white teeth. "No problem at all." She studied the young man for a few moments, and then said with a bit of reproach in her pleasant, velvety voice, "I hate to say it, but you don't look like the images I was shown at all." He looked down as if embarrassed. "Oh, I had to wear something inconspicuous. Walking around as my usual self would be a bit too ostentatious. However, isn't it the same for you? All that makeup to hide your complexion." The young woman frowned. "It is a cosmetic memory, I'll have you know. Regardless, I have already ordered something to eat. You can peruse the menu while we wait." The young man hesitated, then looked around with an amused expression. Finally, he asked, "How do I do that?" She glanced at him with curiosity. "You don't know? Have you never been to a proper restaurant before?" The young man smiled and shook his head, then said wistfully, "To tell you the truth, this is my first time visiting a restaurant. I was raised in the dream realm after all. I only returned to the waking world when I was around 13. Many things here seem very strange to me." With that, Mordred fumbled with his communicator for a bit and finally managed to open the menu. The body he was wearing used a biometric lock, at least. Otherwise, he wouldn't have known how to access the communicator at all. He looked at all the options projected in front of him and asked, "What do you recommend?" The beauty smiled. "I doubt that we have similar tastes." At that moment, the dish she had ordered finally arrived. It was a steak, prepared so rare that it barely looked cooked at all. The young woman elegantly sliced a small piece and brought it to her sensual lips, which were as red as blood. Mordred observed her with a pleasant expression. "Ah, yes, I've heard that you and your sisters follow a very special diet, Lady Song." The young woman licked her lips and looked at him with a neutral expression. "Just call me Seishin, there's no need to be formal." He smiled. "So, Seishin, why did she send you of all people? Are you so expendable that the queen does not mind sacrificing you to me should the date go badly?" Song Se-shan calmly ate another piece of the steak, then wiped her lips with a napkin. "Why would our date go badly? We have a common goal after all. Our clan is your best chance to achieve it." Mordred thought for a bit, then nodded and sighed. "True, however, with that Antarctica thing going on, I would have thought that she would be reluctant to move forward. After all, it's not the best time to do anything drastic." Seishin studied the Prince of War for a few moments, and then smiled. "Oh, on the contrary. We think that the event in Antarctica sets the best stage to do something drastic." He hesitated for a while, then shrugged. "Well, fair enough. So what now? Do I have to kneel and recite a vow, kiss your ring, or do something else?" The beauty shook her head. "Usually you would have had to sign a contract with a drop of your blood. However, considering your propensity to change attires, that would hardly do anything, wouldn't it?" She smiled. "So there's no need. Welcome to Clan Song, Prince Mordred. I look forward to all the great things we will accomplish together." Mordred reciprocated her smile, then chose a couple of options in the menu and pressed them. Then he sighed and said with a bit of amusement, "Ah, it feels strange to be adopted." Eventually, Sunny and Nephi's ended up in his underground dojo. Changing Star looked around, her gaze lingering on the racks of training weapons and the deactivated sleeping pod that stood forlornly in its alcove, all but forgotten by its former occupant. After a few moments of silence, she asked, "Do you make use of all these weapons?" Sunny glanced at the training equipment, lingered for a moment, then shook his head. "Yes and no. In the past 2 years, I did expand my repertoire to include all kinds of sharp implements, but I practice with something better." He was still most confident when wielding swords akin to Azure Blade, Midnight Shard, and his Serpentine Odachi. His proficiency with spears was also quite high, and he was steadily improving his archery skill. However, while Sonny had learned enough to feel comfortable with other types of weapons as well, he had a long way to go before truly mastering them. Nephi's nodded thoughtfully. "Do you use the soul serpent?" Sonny stared at her for a moment, then looked away. "Yes." He was reminded of the shadow bond that connected them. Beyond its main function, it also allowed Sonny to peer into some of Changing Star's secrets. However, she was able to learn a lot of his as well. Sonny had suspected that this was the case from the very start, but now those suspicions were confirmed. He remained silent for a few moments, then suddenly grinned. "Were you surprised?" Nephi's looked at him, hesitated for a moment, and said, "I was very, very much." She sighed, sat down on the floor, and crossed her legs. "I always knew that you were extraordinary. I just didn't think that you possessed a divine aspect too. To be honest, I thought that I was the first." Sonny sat down opposite her and shook his head. "Yeah, I thought so too, but neither of us was the first. It was Mordred instead. He is older than us by 4 or 5 years and had his first nightmare when he was 12. So, he received a divine aspect when you were around 8 and I was around 7. He paused and said with a bitter smile, "Come to think of it, he probably became a sleeper around the time my mother died. Oh, your mother is fine, by the way. Cassie and I visited her from time to time while you were gone." As a hint of emotion appeared on Neff's face, she lowered her head. Thank you." Then she lingered for a moment and asked, "Do you mind telling me where the divine memory in your possession came from? The Weaver's mask?" Sonny smiled darkly. "Do I mind? I do. But I'll tell you anyway. I found it below the cathedral in the Dark City, on an ancient corpse that turned to dust as soon as I took the mask from it." Changing Star tilted her head a little. "Do you mind telling me what it does?" He laughed. "Why not? I'll tell you. It can reverse one's flaw." A sudden silence settled in the dark chamber. Nephi's looked at him, a hint of longing and pain reflecting in her striking eyes. Sonny grinned. "Why do you want to take it from me? All you have to do is to say the word. It's not like I can refuse." She stared at him for a long time, then silently turned away and did not say anything. Sonny's grin turned somber. "Good decision. Did you think that it will save you from the pain? It won't. The mask does not nullify the flaw, it just reverses it. No matter what, the flaw is still a curse. By now, we both should have a good sense about such things. Chances are, the new curse would be more terrible than the old. Right now, you have to burn yourself alive every time you actively use your aspect. With the help of the mask, you would most likely be burning without reprieve forever, unless you were using it." He grew silent and then added, "The mask can also kill you in many other ways. It is too powerful to be used lightly, at least by the likes of us." Nephi's hesitated for a few moments, then gritted her teeth. "It is fine. I don't need to be liberated from my flaw. I don't need a powerful memory to uplift me. I myself am enough." Sonny stared at her, then shook his head. "You are exactly the same. You did not change at all. I thought that 2 years of despair would have made you a little smarter, but you are still clinging to your deranged dreams, aren't you?" She looked at him, remained silent for a while, and then smiled with the corner of her mouth. Despite the smile, however, her eyes remained calm and cold. 2 years? No, I've been desperate for much longer than that, Sonny. Why would I change now?" He let out a long sigh, then looked to the side. "Indeed, so Aster, Song, Vale, they are your next targets, aren't they?" She nodded silently, prompting him to add, "You told me once that just knowing these words can get a person killed. However, I went ahead and did some digging of my own. Aster, Song, and Vale are Asterion, Kai Song, and Anvil of Valor, correct? The former members of your father's cohort." Nephi's nodded again, looking at him intensely. Sonny scowled. They are also known as the sovereigns, because they have conquered the fourth nightmare. They are one rank above the transcendent. They are supreme, are they not? Without saying anything, she just nodded for the third time. Sunny hesitated for a while and then asked, "They killed your father, didn't they?" Nephi's continued to look at him, white flame dancing in her eyes. After some time, she sighed. "Yes, I believe so. My father, he died when I was 4. Before that, the members of his cohort were like aunts and uncles to me. Aster, Song, Vale, that was what he called them. They were his friends." Her expression turned dark. "But after he was gone, something changed. I was too little to understand, but none of these friends came to our help. Instead, the immortal Flame clan fell while their clans soared. And a couple of years after that, the first assassin was sent to eliminate me." Sunny rubbed his face, then asked in an exasperated voice, "But why? Why did they turn on him?" Nephi's looked away. "I don't know." He frowned and hesitated for a moment. He had suspected that he would receive such an answer. However, there was one small detail that did not make sense to him. "If they are so mighty and powerful, then how are you still alive? Why did the sovereigns fail to kill you? All they had to do was pay you a visit in person. No amount of awakened guards or even masters would have been able to stop even one of them." Neff glanced at him and said, her voice even, "They can't." Sunny raised his eyebrows. "What do you mean, they can't? Is there some agreement that prevents them from acting directly?" Changing Star slowly shook her head. "No, they simply can't. The sovereigns, it is hard for them to enter the waking world." Noticing the astonished look on his face, Nephi sighed. "You must have felt a change in your connection to the dream realm and the waking world when you ascended, didn't you?" Sunny slowly nodded, remembering how he first explored his ability to enter the dream realm physically. The process wasn't instantaneous, but it also wasn't too burdensome. He just had to concentrate, feel his connection to the anchor, and reach for it. After a few minutes, he would poof out of existence in reality and appear near the gateway in the ivory tower. Leaving a tether in the waking world wasn't hard, either, although it took more time and some essence. It was as instinctual as summoning memories or commanding echoes. With the knowledge Sunny had received from being collared in the Red Colosseum, he understood that this hinted at the fact that traveling between the two worlds was one of the functions of the spell, as opposed to something tied to his aspect. After he nodded, Changing Star continued. "Awakened establish a connection with the dream realm by anchoring themselves to a gateway. Ascended expand on that connection, making them less tied to the waking world, and thus capable of traveling between the two at will. Transcendent exist in a state of perfect balance. They are connected to both worlds in equal measure, which makes them independent of gateways. In a sense, they are the gateway, which is why they can even bring another person with them in their travels." She paused and then added in a somber tone, "However, that balance is broken once a person becomes supreme. It shifts, tying them to the dream realm instead of the real world. In truth, I don't know much about the power of the sovereigns. All I know is that it is restricted in the waking world and that they can't enter it freely. That is why none of them could harm me directly." Sunny stared, shocked. That revelation, it made so much sense. It explained so many things, from how Nephi's was able to survive to why the government still wielded a lot of power in the waking world. It also gave credence to Master Jet's statement that the sovereigns had long given up on reality. Was that what awaited Sunny if he somehow became supreme one day himself? Feeling as if the world was spinning around him, Sunny frowned, and then asked in a dark tone, "What happens if one becomes sacred then? Would they lose their connection to the real world entirely?" Nephi shrugged. "I don't know. No one knows. No one has ever conquered the fifth nightmare after all." A heavy silence settled between them. After a while, Sunny suddenly asked, "What are domains?" He had not forgotten that detail either. Back on the Ashen Barrow, Nephi's had asked him which domain he belonged to. He had not known what she meant then, and he did not know now. Neph sighed. "That I am not entirely sure myself. All I know is that each sovereign rules over a domain. It is an expression of a function of the aspect, distinct from abilities but sharing a lot in common with them. In practice, it is synonymous with their authority and the territories they control, as well as people that serve them." She paused for a few moments, and then added grimly, "The sovereigns are already immensely powerful, but within their domains, they are practically invincible. Not even saints can hope to challenge them." Sunny let out a stifled laugh. "And these are the people you want to destroy?" Changing Star smiled. "Why not? Nothing is absolute, Sunny. 2 years ago I would have never challenged a sovereign. Today I am still too weak to do it. I am still insignificant, but will it still be the case 2 years from now? Will I still be as weak and will they still be as powerful? What about in 5 years? Things never remain the same. Everything is always changing. Even gods can die. Asterion, Kai Song, and Anvil of Valor are no gods, so why should they be spared?" Sunny shook his head. "I don't know. Forget about 2 years from now or 5 or 10. How are you going to survive now? How are you going to avoid being squashed by them today? What is your actual plan?" Nephi's looked at him for a long time and then sighed. "I don't have a plan." She remained silent for a moment before adding evenly, "Oh, yet." Sunny did not know what to say, so he simply shook his head. It was pointless trying to dissuade her from her obsession, regardless. Nephi's wanted to destroy the spell, and the sovereign stood in her way. It was as simple as that, with an added weight of good old-fashioned vengeance. He was not so sure that she was completely misguided, either, not anymore. Sunny wanted nothing to do with the sovereigns and the great clans, but was there really a choice? Simply by daring to be someone and possess something, he put himself in their crosshairs. As long as he had something of value, others would want to either take it away or make him serve them. That was the nature of the world. Since the great clans insisted on being in control of humanity, there was no escape from them. Unless Sunny wanted to spend the rest of his life as a hermit in the dream realm, he would have to interact with the domains in one way or another. He would have to allow himself to be controlled as well. A bitter smile appeared on his lips. "Isn't that ironic? Why was it so hard to gain even a tiny bit of freedom in this damned world? Sunny wanted to become strong to be free, but the stronger he became, the more formidable powers wanted to subjugate him. Now it seemed that the only choice he had was to either give up, or become even stronger still, stronger than anyone and anything. Which was more or less exactly what Nephi's was trying to achieve, even if for a different reason. He sighed and then waved a hand dismissively. "Anyway, I'm tired of this conversation. Want to spar?" Sunny and Nephi stood opposite each other, holding training swords. Both felt more than a little disturbed by how much this scene resembled their bitter confrontation at the very top of the Crimson Spire. Of course, today, the situation was completely different. They were just going for a friendly spar, not a battle to the death. There were no stakes in this training fight, no emotional investment, no complicated mixture of regret, fury, and resentment. So why did Sunny feel as though he had to prove something? Forcing himself to relax, he glanced at Nephi's and attacked. Their swords met with a deafening clangor. A few seconds later, Sunny jumped away and shouted, "Stop, stop, stop." Changing Star froze while he looked around, breathing heavily. Sunny gritted his teeth and spat a muffled curse. Damnation! His idea to have a spar might not have been the wisest one he ever had. Yes, the underground dojo was designed specifically to allow Awakened to train their powers. It was isolated, reinforced and heavily armored, able to transform into an impregnable bunker in case a gate opened nearby, and a tide of nightmare creatures flooded the district. The interior was furnished with heavy plates of armor-grade ceramic alloy, and supplied with training equipment meant to withstand the rigors of awakened power. However, Sunny and Nephi's weren't awakened anymore. They were full-fledged masters, and abnormal ones at that. The alloy sword in his hand was shattered. A few plates on the floor were broken. If this continued, the repair bill for the dojo was going to really sting Sunny's wallet. More than that, Nephi's was not exactly at her best. She had just returned to the waking world yesterday. Before that, she had been a sleeper, which meant that she had no experience of controlling soul essence whatsoever. Let alone doing it with intricate precision and efficiency of a master. She had never even done it crudely as an awakened. Sunny could tell exactly how chaotic and unrestrained the flow of her essence was, because Shadow Dance now allowed him to sense the movement of the mystical energy through the bodies of his opponents. Sure, every master had an instinctual understanding of how to augment their physicality with essence, but it still took some time to get used to it, and even more to master it. However, every ascended before changing star enjoyed having the experience of making the first steps on that long and arduous road as an awakened. In fact, by the time awakened reached ascension, controlling essence was as natural to them as breathing. Not so much for Nephi's. Her return as a master might have been miraculous, but it also deprived her of a lot of things that people who did not break the natural order of things usually enjoyed. She was out of her depth. As Changing Star stared at the broken sword in her hands with a deep frown, Sunny waved a hand in the air and forced out a smile. That, you'll have to spend some time learning how to guide your soul essence. After that, you will have to spend even more time relearning how to fight with its help. I had years of practice already, so fighting at full force won't do us any good. He thought for a bit and then said, "All right, let's try this again, but without using any essence at all. It will be a pure test of skill." Sure, Nephi's had one more core than him, but with all things considered, if both of them neglected using essence or augmenting themselves with their abilities, the gap in physical prowess should not have been too overwhelming. Once again, they stood opposite each other and concentrated. Each discarded their broken weapons and took new ones. A moment later, they clashed. This time things went better, however not by much. One of the problems was their battle techniques. Due to Shadow Dance and his familiarity with Nephi's, it didn't take Sunny long to sense the core of her style. It had changed a lot and matured over the past 2 years, but so did his mastery of his aspect legacy. Although Sunny could not master the style yet, he attuned himself to its flow and cadence enough to be able to predict some of Neph's moves with a good degree of precision. The problem, then, was that Changing Star herself could do more or less the same. Her ability to discern, predict, and control patterns of combat was not based in affinity to shadows, and was sufficiently different from it, but achieved a similar result. It was the product of her talent, training, and incredible combat intelligence. As the result, Sunny was able to somewhat predict what Nephi's was thinking of doing, while she could predict that he had predicted her actions, and change her approach on the fly, which he would also discern, and so on. It was very confusing. Sunny had never found himself in a battle that demanded so much mental gymnastics before. He was not even entirely sure what was happening. There had to be a solution for this predicament, of course, but he had no time to come up with one yet. However, that was just half of the problem. The other half was that Neph's essence control was so rudimentary and bad that she couldn't even prevent herself from instinctively using it. As the result, Sunny had to endure sudden outbursts of speed, strength, and agility that were too chaotic to predict. Because he was holding himself back, handling this pressure was rather troublesome. At some point, Changing Star overdid it during one of her strikes, causing her second training sword to shatter, as well. The jagged end slid forward and bit into Sunny's cheek. Drops of blood fell to the floor. Sunny jerked back and grimaced, feeling that the left side of his face was seriously torn. The wound was bad enough to cause blood weave to shed a few drops. It was nothing that he wouldn't be able to heal quickly, of course, but it still hurt. Before he could say anything, Nephi suddenly reached forward and placed a cool palm on his torn cheek. In the next moment, a brilliant white radiance illuminated the underground dojo. His pain instantly disappeared, replaced instead by relief and gentle warmth. He felt as though he was being cleansed by something pure, precious, and sacred. A pristine white flame. Standing close to each other, the two of them froze for a moment. Neff's hand rested on Sunny's cheek, which was swiftly healing. The soft radiance emanating from her skin reflected in her calm, gray eyes. Beneath that calmness, there were pain and suffering in them. Sunny moved slightly, wishing to say that she didn't have to do this. Before he had the time to speak, however, something unexpected happened. The white flames suddenly seeped under his skin and then engulfed him. Sunny shuddered, thinking that he was caught on fire, but then froze. Somehow, it did not seem like the white radiance was harming him at all. It just enveloped his body, making his skin shine with a suffused glow. However, it was also not healing him. Instead, Sunny stared at Nephi's with astonishment and asked in a low voice, What is happening?" From the confused look on her face, she did not do whatever it was that had happened on purpose. Changing Star took an involuntary step back, removing her cool palm from his cheek, and briefly glanced at her hand. The white glow was gone from it. I don't know." Sunny opened his eyes wide and looked down on his shining body. Very strangely, he felt empowered. In fact, his condition was very similar to how he felt when one of his shadows was wrapped around him. His physical prowess seemed to have doubled. There were small differences, of course. The augmentation of Neff's flame seemed to be more furious and active, centered around strength and resilience. It also filled him with a soft, pleasant feeling of warmth. What was more, it did not only affect his body. It reached into his soul as well, igniting and enhancing it. The shadow essence flowing through his body became much more potent and vibrant, full of greater energy. Sunny blinked. Did Nephi's just augment him with her aspect ability? Since when can you augment other people? Changing Star seemed to be as bewildered as he was, even though it did not show on her face. I can't. This was not supposed to happen. My dormant ability only evolved to include soul augmentation when I ascended. It never evolved to be able to spread to other people. Sunny opened his mouth, then closed it again. Eventually, he hissed. Then how do you explain this? I'm glowing. He waved his hand in the air, causing the shadows of the underground dojo to move and shift. Then a bizarre thought entered his mind. Wait. Following his suspicion, Sunny lingered for a moment, and then commanded the gloomy shadow to wrap itself around Nephi's. The shadow did not even roll its eyes as it usually did when receiving an order. It eagerly slid forward and swiftly wrapped itself around the lithe, slender body of Changing Star. Neph flinched. Hug. She studied her arms with wide eyes. Her ivory skin had turned gray, as if covered by dark film. Then she made her hands into fists and frowned. I feel stronger. The two of them remained silent for a few moments, processing the implications of this unexpected discovery. Usually, Sunny felt a lot of negative emotions every time he thought about the innate ability of his aspect, Shadow Bond, which tied him to Changing Star's will. On this occasion, however, his curiosity and greed for power briefly overpowered his resentment. If Shadow Bond allowed Nephi's and him to augment each other to this degree, what else would they be capable of? Neff seemed to come to the same conclusion. They glanced at each other, understanding the other's thoughts without having to say anything. Sunny hesitated for a moment, then said, "It causes you pain to use your ability. We can stop now." She slowly shook her head. "No, not yet." With that, Sunny simply nodded and commanded the gloomy shadow to return and wrap itself around his body. At the same time, he ordered the other three to do the same. Changing Star, meanwhile, concentrated for a moment, causing the white radiance suffusing his skin to grow many times more intense. Sunny let out an audible gasp. 4 shadows made him 5 times more powerful, that he already knew. Flames summoned by Nephi's, who was a tyrant, were more or less akin to 5 additional shadows. In theory, his physical prowess should have grown tenfold as the result. What a stupendous augmentation! Combined with his might as a master, his 4 cores, and the subtle but consequential physical enhancement he received from Blood Weave, Sunny should have become monstrously strong. But in reality, the effect was even greater. The shadows and the brilliant light seemed to resonate with each other, making the sum greater than its parts. Sunny turned into a silhouette shrouded in broiling darkness. That darkness, however, was permeated with blinding white light. The light made the darkness deeper, while the darkness made the light much more stark and radiant. He looked like an abyssal spirit of the starlit void. He felt powerful, immensely powerful. Powerful enough to face a saint in a fight. He looked at the training sword grasped in his hand, and easily made the reinforced alloy shatter in his grip. He did not even have to exert a lot of his strength. Deeply stunned, Sunny whispered, "Scary." A few moments later, Nephi sighed and recalled her flames. Sunny allowed his shadows to slide back to the floor. Changing Star looked at him and asked, her voice unsure, "How did it feel?" Sunny remained silent for a while. Eventually, he forced out a pale smile and said, "Like a dream." They stayed in the dojo for the entire night, experimenting with the strange and frighteningly powerful application of their unnatural bond. There were many things they had to explore, even though it was too dangerous to test the limits of this new power here. The last thing Sunny wanted was to completely wreck the foundation of his home. It wouldn't have been fun if the whole building suddenly collapsed. Still, there were a lot of things that they had discovered. First, both Sunny and Nephi's could be enhanced by the white flames and the shadows. All of this might could be concentrated on one person, or shared between them in any proportion they chose. Mixing any light into the shadows, or even one shadow into the radiant light, made the end result more powerful. Secondly, the same could be done to their memories. Pouring all of their power into the cruel sight, for example, made it somewhere around 15 times deadlier. This scale of enhancement went well beyond the confines of its rank, making the somber spear as powerful as a transcendent weapon. Applied to an armor, the augmentation was just as strong. However, doing so would have been a bit wasteful. Memories had no souls, and as such, the part of changing stars' flames that made a person's soul more active and resilient was wasted on them. It did, however, affect shadows and echoes. Sunny and Nephi's tested the full augmentation of their combined aspects on Saint first, and then on the echo of a 6-armed ascended demon that Changing Star possessed. The result was as frightening as what Sunny had experienced himself. As the dawn painted the world in shades of pale violet and lilac, the pair was still cooped up in the underground dojo. Although neither spoke, their eyes were full of thought. Both understood what their discovery meant. Each of them bore a divine aspect. Each was immensely powerful when compared to other ascended. When 2 bearers of divine aspects combined their power, however, imagining what they could do was indeed a bit scary. After a while, Sunny glanced at his communicator and flinched. "Crap, it's morning already. I'm going to be late for my lecture." He looked at Nephi's. suddenly realizing how tired and spent she looked. Using her ability so much must not have been easy. She simply nodded. "You can go if you wish. I'll rest for a while." Sunny hesitated for a moment, then nodded and used Shadow's step to jump to his closet on the second floor of the house. A few minutes later, he was already running out of the door, wearing civilian clothes that Kai had helped him pick a while ago. Changing Star was left alone. On the way back from school, Rain couldn't think about anything else except for the news that she had heard from her classmates. At first, she had dismissed them as a wild rumor, but then her inquisitive nature forced her to check the respectable government portals to make sure. A minute of research revealed that the rumors were true. Changing Star of the Immortal Flame Clan, the lost hero of the Forgotten Shore, had ascended and returned to the real world. She was alive. Can't be. By now, the news was spreading across the network like wildfire. Rain could tell that many of the passengers riding the train with her were thinking and talking about the same thing. Everyone looked shocked and excited. She did not pay other people any attention, however. There was only one thought on her mind. She had to tell Sunny. Her friend and mentor was a member of Changing Star's cohort, after all. More than that, from the hints she had received from Effie and a short conversation she had had with Sunny, Rain knew that there was much more between the two than simple camaraderie. He had basically admitted as much. Sunny will be so happy. Despite the fact that she was not supposed to have the next lesson with her young tutor for a few days, Rain decided to bring him the news personally. And right away. She simply couldn't wait. Of course, in all her excitement, she had failed to account for the fact that if the news were indeed true, Sunny would have been one of the first people to learn of it. Full of anticipation, Rain rushed from the tram station to her mentor's house, opened the door, and walked inside. Throwing her backpack into the corner by habit, she took off her shoes and shouted, "Sunny, Sunny, are you home? You won't believe." Then, however, the teenage girl froze with her mouth wide open. As she watched in stunned silence, the curtain hanging over the entrance to the guest bedroom parted, and a tall, incredibly beautiful young woman walked into the living room. Suddenly, it seemed as if sunlight pouring through the windows became a little bit brighter. The young woman was slender and graceful, with flawless ivory skin and striking gray eyes. Her face was calm, aloof, and strangely mesmerizing. What shocked Rain much more, however, was that the beautiful stranger's skin glistened with moisture, as if she had just left the shower. She was wearing nothing but one of Sunny's black shirts, leaving her long legs mostly bare. And her hair, was of a strange silver-white color. The silver-haired young woman walked toward the kitchen, then stopped and looked at Rain. A hint of confusion appeared on her face. She hesitated for a moment, then said, "Hey." Rain raised a trembling hand and pointed a finger at the stranger's head. Her teeth chattered as she forced out, You're. The beautiful stranger raised an eyebrow and remained silent. Rain finally managed to finish her sentence. "You're Changing Star." The last daughter of the Immortal Flame Clan tilted her head a little, then shrugged. "Yes, I am. Who are you?" Rain swallowed, slowly realizing that she was in the presence of one of the most talented battle commanders and heroes of humanity. A person so renowned that there was hardly anyone in the entire world who did not know her name. And Sunny's. Remembering the lessons he had taught her, the teenage girl forced herself to calm down somewhat and said weakly, I am Rain. Sunny is my teacher." Changing Star remained silent for a moment, studying the unexpected guest. Then, a small hint of a smile appeared on her beautiful face. "Really? Well, I used to be your teacher's teacher. I guess that makes me your grand teacher." Rain opened her eyes wide. "What?" Changing Star of the Immortal Flame Clan was her what? The concept simply failed to register. The supposed grand teacher, meanwhile, walked over to the kitchen counter and poured herself some water. She drank it, then looked at Rain. After a few seconds of silence, she said, "I'll be staying here for a few days. You can call me Neff." Rain slowly nodded, not quite sure what she was just told. Was she sleeping? Was the famous lady of the Immortal Flame clan in front of her, wearing Sunny's shirt, telling Rain to call her by her first name, a nickname even? If that bastard Sunny had not subjected Rain to stumbling into Song of the Fallen, raised by wolves and nightingale, she would have probably fainted by now. As it was, Rain was barely able to remain on her feet. Lady Changing Star, Neff, looked at her attentively and then suddenly asked a strange question. "Rain, does your home have a big window and a lawn?" Rain silently nodded. "Yes, why?" Neff lingered for a moment and then turned away. "Just wondering." Then she looked toward the living room area and sipped her water. "Oh, by the way, do you know how to control the entertainment system of this house?" Rain nodded again. Yes, I do." Changing Star smiled with satisfaction. "Great, I was told that there is a movie about me. Can you put it on the projector?" Rain made a deep breath, obediently walked over to the projector, connected it to her communicator, and searched for the Song of Light and Darkness on the network. A few minutes later, she found herself sitting on the sofa next to Master Changing Star, the legendary heiress of Immortal Flame, as the somber music reverberated all around them. The movie was starting. Am I dreaming? This can't be real, can it? On the wall in front of them, the interior of a spacious and brightly lit room appeared. A handsome man with dark circles under his eyes was studying a map, while a little girl with silver hair was playing on a carpet near him. The man was speaking. "We awakened, only raise arms to protect humanity." Sitting next to Rain, Nephi sighed and palmed her face. Projected onto the wall, a languid jade beauty with a slim waist and long eyelashes was traversing a labyrinth of crimson coral, her voluptuous figure barely covered by a flimsy seaweed attire. A teenage boy of about 13 years of age was scurrying along as he shouted, "Are you crazy?" Sitting on the sofa near the real Changing Star, Rain felt like sinking into the earth. As the movie went by, her cheeks slowly turned bright red. The daughter of the Immortal Flame clan, on the contrary, became increasingly more deadpan and devoid of emotion. By now, her face was so still that it seemed paralyzed. Rain awkwardly cleared her throat. Come to think of it, the actress they chose does not look like you at all. You are much prettier." Nephi shifted and briefly glanced down. Then she said evenly, "Thank you." After a while she added, "Why would they cast a child to play Sunny? What a strange decision. Only a complete fool could mistake him for a young boy." Rain let out a nervous laugh. Yeah, definitely." She looked away in utter embarrassment and then forced out, "And what is up with that stupid catchphrase? That does not sound like something Sunny would say at all." Changing Star moved, suddenly becoming a little more lively. "Oh no, that actually happened a lot." The movie, meanwhile, continued. The three sleepers braved the wilderness of the Forgotten Shore and eventually reached the Dark City. The brief moment of liveliness passed, and instead, Changing Star seemed to grow more rigid and cold with each scene. Rain felt so uncomfortable that she could not bring herself to say anything. What kind of idiot directed that stupid movie? Meanwhile, a handsome young man with broad shoulders and a noble bearing appeared on the screen. Rain glanced at Lady Nephi's curiously, wondering how much of what was shown about her relationship with the heroic Han Lee Castor was true, and how her apparent relationship with Sunny fit into it. Could it be that there had been an actual love triangle between them? Sadly, she failed to glimpse anything from Changing Star's stoic face. The movie progressed, slowly reaching its culmination. On the wall, the masculine face of the actor playing Sir Castor radiated courage and passion. Holding the grief-stricken jade beauty by the hand, he looked her in the eyes and said with passion, "Should I fall, do not cry for me, my lady. My life does not matter, but yours does. Immortal flame must never be extinguished. As long as it burns, humanity still has hope. The dreamers of the dark city have hope. As long as you live, I can face 1,000 deaths with a triumphant smile." Rain shifted uncomfortably. "Is it me, or is it getting hot in here?" Not a single muscle moved on Changing Star's face. She looked at the projection with a deadpan expression. The projection, however, suddenly stuttered. Rain frowned. "Huh." In the next moment, she thought that she smelled smoke. Turning around, the teenage girl noticed a thin stream of it rising from inside Sunny's expensive projector. "That's strange." Rain opened her mouth to say something, but before she could, the projector suddenly exploded. After the movie was suddenly and violently interrupted, Rain only stayed for long enough to help Changing Star clean up the debris of the malfunctioned projector. Then, she found an excuse, grabbed her backpack, and hurriedly left. Who knew what was going to explode next? Once the teenage girl was gone, Nephi's was once again left alone in the empty house. She lingered for a bit, then went back into the guest bedroom and rummaged through Effie's closet. She had no clothes apart from the tracksuit that the academy had issued to her, which was soaked with sweat after the night she had spent with Sunny underground. There were memories, of course, but she had worn armor for the better part of the last 3 years. Putting on something mundane was strangely comforting. Leaving Sunny's shirt on, she found a pair of gym shorts to match it. Sadly, other articles of Effie's clothing did not fit her too well. She was going to have to do some shopping soon. Considering such matters again felt very strange. Eventually, Nephi's found herself back in the living room with nothing to do. She simply sat in silence for a while, trying to deal with the disturbing oddity of not being in danger. Then, she shifted uncomfortably, looked around, and took out the state-of-the-art communicator the government provided to her. She stared at it for some time, then tentatively accessed the network. After a while, Neff found herself senselessly scrolling through popular clips. A few minutes later, one video caught her attention. A demonic figure in black armor and fearsome mask stood in a small clearing in the middle of a thick forest, a long blade of an odachi resting on his shoulder. The swordsman's white hair moved slightly in the wind. Something about him seemed odd. Suddenly, 12 figures appeared from behind the trees, surrounding the demonic swordsman. One of the ambushers spoke. "Sorry, mongrel, no hard feeling, right?" Nephi shook her head slightly and sighed. 12 against 1. The man in black armor, meanwhile, remained silent for a moment and then said calmly, "None whatsoever." Already knowing how the fight would end, Neff moved her finger to scroll on, but then stopped. Something very unexpected was happening on the screen of her communicator. Instead of being instantly overwhelmed, the warrior dodged several attacks and dove through a stream of scorching fire, his black armor reflecting the crimson flames like the scales of an infernal monster. His gauntlet collided against the head of one of the enemies, instantly breaking the skull. White sparks slowly ignited in the depths of Neff's eyes. Interesting. She lingered, watching the brutal slaughter with a hint of excitement. After spending years fighting against overwhelming odds, Nephi's couldn't help but root for the lonesome swordsman. A few seconds later, she was fully engrossed in the video. Remarkable, the second lecture had turned out to be a challenge for Sunny. Not because he felt unprepared to teach the less experienced awakened, but because all of them were very enthused and full of questions about Changing Star's return. The whole academy was abuzz. "Master Sunless, have you met Lady Changing Star? Is it true, did she ascend? Are you going to join the Immortal Flame clan now? Can we join too? Normally, that would not have been a problem. Sadly for Sonny, he could not refuse to answer any question due to his flaw, so it took some time and ingenuity to not let anything important slip while reining the students in. Eventually, he forced them to concentrate on the lecture. After the lecture was over, he had to take care of some administrative issues, as well as visit teacher Julius and assist the old man with a few tasks. Seeing that his assistant was very eager to leave, the elderly instructor did not keep Sonny long and soon let him go with a knowing smile. "Ah, youth." Sonny frowned a little as he hurried to the door. What is that supposed to mean? Throwing the confusion out of his mind, Sonny decided to not waste time and used Shadow Step to reach the train station as fast as possible. On the way home, he was deep in thought. After the night of experimenting and exploring their bond, he was very curious what else Nephi's and he could do. As far as Sonny understood it, Shadow Bond made it so that their souls were strangely considered to be two parts of a single whole, at least when applied to the function of their aspects. So, did that mean that he could pull Neph with him through the shadows when using Shadow Step? If he used a charm like Blood Blossom, would its effect be shared to her? If so, would the boost granted to them remain the same, or grow twice as weak? He had many questions like that, and answers to them could only be found through further experimentation. Sonny was very excited. Why wouldn't he be? He was always resentful of his weakness, and of the fact that stronger awakened or powerful nightmare creatures could snuff out his life without too much trouble. Anything that could grant him more power to defend himself was a boon, and the memory of how powerful he had felt last night was still fresh in his mind. Of course, reality was not so simple. Firstly, any experiment would demand Neph to go through torturous pain. Secondly, he had not forgotten that this power came at a cost. The cost was his freedom. Nephi seemed to be reluctant to use the shadow bond to compel him to do her bidding, but he could not be completely sure of her intentions, not until they talked openly about it. It was just that. He didn't want to have that talk yet. Talking openly about anything was the last thing he usually wanted to do. Later, I'll do it later. Neph was barely out of the nightmare. Sonny himself had not been in the best of shapes after ascending for a while. It was better to give her some time to balance herself. Soon, he was nearing his house. The security system automatically scanned his biometrics and unlocked the door. Opening it, Sonny walked inside and took off his shoes. Then, he looked around and noticed Neph sitting on a tall stool near the kitchen counter, staring at her communicator with strange intensity. Her eyes were burning, and it seemed as if she had spent a lot of time without moving. She seemed to be so engrossed with what was happening on the screen that she did not even pay attention to his return. Clenching her fist, Neph suddenly spoke. "Come on, you can do it. She is good, but you are better." He blinked a couple of times, unaccustomed to hearing such enthusiasm in Changing Star's voice. She was usually far more reserved. And what did she mean? What was he supposed to do? Who was he better than? Ah, she must be talking to herself. But what the hell is she watching? Sonny took a few steps forward and looked over Neph's shoulder. A strange expression appeared on his face. On the screen, a ferocious swordsman in black armor was fighting against a graceful woman who wore a light metal armor and an elegant half-mask. Rose petals fell from above, carpeting a grandiose arena. A dark Odachi and a slender Estok clashed against each other, filling the air with the clangor of steel. Wait, isn't that my duel against Queen Bee? That was a memorable fight. He had barely won that one. Sonny blinked a couple of times, remained silent for a few moments, and then coughed. "Oh hey, I'm back." Neph's eyes froze. She paused the video, hesitated, then slowly turned and looked at him with a startled expression. "Oh hey." Sonny stared at her for a couple of seconds, then asked with a little smile. "What are you watching?" Neph's eyes suddenly livened up, and gestured at her communicator. "That I stumbled on a video of a very interesting fighter. Have you heard about that guy, Mongrel? He's incredible. I've been watching, studying his fights for a few hours." Sonny scratched the back of his head and then said evenly, "Mongrel, yeah, I've heard a few things about him. Incredible, you say? Do tell what is so incredibly about him in detail." Then he suddenly frowned and sniffed the air. "What's this smell? Crap, don't tell that the filtration system is glitching." Sonny looked around and then froze. His eye twitched. What happened to my projector?" A familiar deadpan expression appeared on Neff's face. She glanced in the direction where the expensive model of the projector had used to be, lingered for a moment, and shrugged nonchalantly. "Oh, a malfunction, I guess. How strange." Next, as Sonny bitterly explored the damage done to his entertainment system by the strange malfunction, Nephis silently watched him from her stool. "Doesn't make sense. Gone. The projector is completely gone. It was so expensive." After a while, he turned to Changing Star with a miserable expression and opened his mouth, then frowned in confusion. "Wait, is that my shirt?" Neff shifted a little and then said, her voice even, "I don't have any clothes." Sonny stared at her for a few moments, then waved a hand and looked away, forgetting what he was going to say. "Never mind. You can keep it. We can also order a delivery of anything else you need. I am an incredibly rich entrepreneur, you know." He paused, then added with a bit of embarrassment, "Well, I used to be rich anyway. These days, I pretty much spend everything on research." She tilted her head a little, then suddenly said, "The girl you're tutoring visited." "What?" Pretending to be nonchalant, Sonny glanced at Nephis and answered in a neutral tone, "Oh, strange. We weren't supposed to have any lessons until a few days from now." Neff remained silent for a few moments, then looked away with a smile. "She is a bright kid. I'm glad you are teaching her." He studied her expression with a frown. "What's up with that smile?" Finally, Sonny shrugged. "Well, money is money. My lessons aren't cheap." After that, he sighed, threw the destroyed projector out of his mind, and walked into the kitchen. "Are you hungry? I can cook something up. My culinary skills have improved a lot, you know, as you should have already noticed." It was a strange thing. Back on the Forgotten Shore, Nephis had always been the one in charge of feeding the cohort. Now, their roles seemed to have reversed in more ways than one. She deactivated her communicator and said neutrally, "I could eat, thank you." Then Changing Star frowned slightly and added, "Oh, but I don't have a lot of time. There is a consultation with the government psychiatrist I need to attend shortly. By remote, of course." Sonny stared at her for a while, then shook his head. "This is so weird." Deciding to prepare something that did not demand a lot of time to make, he took out a pack of ramen, some vegetables, a piece of natural meat, and a pair of eggs. "I never thought that I would hear something like that from you, of all people. Psychiatrist, really." He started the process of cooking ramen and added, "Was it really that bad?" Changing Star sighed and looked down. After a while, she suddenly said, "No, it wasn't too bad." Her voice sounded distant and a bit strange. "In fact, out there in the dream realm, I felt." Nephis inhaled deeply and then looked at him somberly. "Happy." Sonny almost dropped the cooking pot. Of all the answers out there, he had not expected to hear that one. Looking at Nephis with an incredulous expression, he asked, "What did you say, happy?" She sighed and nodded. "I know that it sounds strange. And yes, traveling through that hell alone was excruciating, terrible, and hard. Many times I did not think that I would survive. Other times I wanted to die. There was so much pain, so much hunger, so much thirst, so much cold, so much unbearable heat, so much silence." A wistful expression slowly settled on her face. "But it was also so Simple, so liberating. All I had to do was walk, fight, kill, survive. There was no space for unnecessary thoughts. No burdens I had to carry. No complicated feelings, no responsibility. I did not have to remember where I came from and where I was headed. I did not have to be a part of anything. It was just me against the nightmare creatures and the dream realm itself. He listened silently, trying to imagine what living like that would feel like. Well, he didn't have to try too hard. Had he not experienced something similar while living alone in the ruined cathedral of the Dark City? Yes, he had not been entirely himself back then, but he was also the happiest he had ever been, perhaps. There was a bliss in giving up on everything except for the things he needed to survive. Even if the things he was giving up on were his sanity, his future, and his very humanity. Granted, his isolation had only lasted for several months instead of years, and the environment had not been as dire. What would have happened to him if he had not abandoned the cathedral to join Changing Star's ill-fated crusade? She looked down and added evenly, I have never felt truly connected to the rest of humanity. I was always a bit of a stranger, I guess. Out there in the dream realm with only nightmare creatures surrounding me, that connection grew even more ethereal. Sometimes I even felt like everything except for that desolate purgatory had been just a fleeting dream, a strange illusion that I had imagined. The dream realm, it seemed much more real. It seemed like a place where I belonged, with other monsters like me. She sighed, then looked at him and added, So that's why I agreed to the offer to receive counseling. It is not because I feel fragile and on the verge of breaking apart. It's just that I'm afraid to lose what little humanity I have left. I never had a lot to begin with. After Neff was done speaking, Sonny stared at her for some time, then shook his head. I don't think I have ever heard Neff speak so much. Placing ramen in the boiling water, he glanced at her with a frown. Well, if you put it like that, I guess a little counseling would do you good. However, I can tell you right now and without a shadow of a doubt that you are not a nightmare creature. You're a human through and through. Believe me, I would know. A pale smile appeared on Changing Star's face. Thank you for saying that. Sonny looked at her with an amused expression, and then smiled. I don't think you understand. I am not saying this because I consider you a human or because I feel like you are a human or because I believe that you are a human. It's just a fact. He pointed to his eye. I have special eyes, remember, from that attribute of mine. I have seen what people look like and what nightmare creatures look like inside. He peered into Neff's soul and grimaced, almost blinded by the brilliant radiance of 5 flaming, incandescent suns that burned inside of it. There was no sign of the vile darkness that dwelled in the souls of the corrupted abominations. Cracking an egg on the edge of the pan, he looked at her and scoffed. You don't look anything like a nightmare creature, that's all. Soon, 2 bowls of delicious steaming ramen were on the table in front of them. Sonny had never invited anyone to taste his ramen, but he was quite pleased with the result. His past of only eating synth paste seemed so distant that he did not even want to remember it. Both dug in and finished their portions in record time. Sonny drank the last of the fragrant broth and let out a delighted sigh. Nephis acted more reserved, but he could feel that she was very satisfied too. Putting the bowl away, Changing Star smiled slightly and looked at him. A hesitant expression appeared on her face. A few moments later, she suddenly said, Be that as it may, while I was lost and wandering the dream realm, slowly forgetting what it felt like to be human, there was one thing I clung to that reminded me that all my prior life had not been just a dream. Do you know what it was? Sonny thought for a bit, then shrugged. I don't know, a memory, your sword dream blade. She lingered for a few moments, then slowly shook her head. No, it was you. Sonny froze and stared at her with surprise. Huh. Nephis smiled slightly. Your runes. Although I could not know what was happening to you, Cassie, and the others, I could still feel connected to you through the runes. I could see that you were still out there, alive and doing incredible things. The new memories you received told me a little about what kind of enemies you fought. The speed at which your aspect legacy progressed told me how hard you were working to sharpen your battle skill. As long as I saw the runes, I knew that I had not imagined the past, and did not feel as alone. She shifted and then added, when I was bored, I liked to imagine what exactly happened to give you a sudden influx of fragments, what the nightmare creature that gifted you a memory looked like, how you defeated it. Things like that. Oh, and I was bored often. While my journey was often full of hardship and dread, it could also be terribly monotonous sometimes. So that was pretty much the only way I could entertain myself. Changing Star looked at him, lingered for a moment, and then said, I know it was not really something that you did consciously. Still, I wanted to say thank you. You helped me a lot, Sonny. You made it easier for me to keep going. I won't forget that. He stared at her, suddenly uncomfortable. Then he looked away in embarrassment and cleared his throat. Are you sure that you have not received counseling already? I mean, that doesn't sound like you. Very, enlightened. Anyway, you're welcome, I guess. Nephi smiled and did not respond. Sonny remained silent for a bit, and then forced himself to say, actually, I spent a lot of time staring at your runes as well. He looked at the floor. Granted, I was not exactly going crazy from isolation like you. Well, except for a short stretch of falling into a bottomless abyss all alone, I guess. But the point is, to be honest, I am, unsatisfied with the fact that you are so far ahead of me. Every time you gained a soul fragment, it urged me to try and get two. The stronger you grew, the more I wanted to become stronger as well. A large part of those things I gained was because of you. I guess you too kept me going, in a sense. He fell silent, and then glanced at Nephi's with a slightly bitter expression. Of course, no matter how hard I tried, I had never managed to catch up to you. Every time I fell short. It did not feel nice at all, but it also forced me to try harder, I guess. She studied his face for a few moments, and then shook her head. It is much easier for me to gain soul fragments. You know that. Even though I am still ahead, I suspect that you have fought and slain many more nightmare creatures than I have. In fact, I know you did. Sonny smiled. Who cares? It's not a competition where you get rewarded for the effort. Only the result matters. In the end, a person is either strong or they are weak. The stronger ones will always trample those who are weaker. Isn't that how the world works? Nephi's looked down, then slowly shook her head. You are wrong, I think. Results matter, yes, but it's not like how you got there doesn't. Every victory you achieve teaches you a lesson. Every defeat you suffer teaches you even more. I guess it all depends on what you call strength. Sonny grimaced. Well, let me ask you a question. Can you say that I am stronger than you? Changing Star stared at him with an even expression. Several seconds passed by, but she remained silent. A dark grin appeared on Sonny's face. He sighed, and then collected the empty bowls to clean them. Effie doesn't seem to think that I am. According to her, I lack conviction. I don't even really know what conviction is and where does one find it, but even I can't honestly say that I am stronger than you. That should tell you something, considering, you know, my clear conscience. Nephi's lingered for a few moments, and then suddenly said in calm tone, You are stronger than you think you are. Sonny put the bowls into the sink and turned on the water. Standing with his back to her, he stayed quiet for a while. After some time, he started to wash the dishes and said, Your counseling session is about to start. You should hurry. She looked at his back for a few moments, then silently stood up and went away. Sonny was left alone in the kitchen. He finished washing the bowls, put them on the drying rack, and wiped his hands with a towel. Then he glanced in the direction of the guest room, shook his head, and scoffed. Ah, who cares? Apparently, I am incredible. A week later, two people sat across from each other on the cold floor of the underground dojo, their eyes closed. With their legs crossed and their hands resting on their laps, it seemed as though they were meditating. Of course they weren't. While Sunny was calm and relaxed, Nephi's was the opposite. There was a furious torrent of soul energy flowing through her body, making it hard for her to remain still. Invisible to anyone except for her partner, radiant streams of ethereal essence rushed through her veins like rivers of flame. Her breathing was uneven, and there were beads of sweat on her face. Sunny observed Changing Star through his shadows. After a while he said, "You are doing much better. While crude, your control is already stable. However, there is no precision to it. A master has to be intricate in how they apply and expend their essence. That is what truly separates us from the awakened. While the soul of an ascended is more potent, the gap is not too large. It is our ability to make better use of this potential that really separates us from the rest of them." Neph was doing well. In fact, her rapid progress in learning how to control her essence was nothing short of exceptional. However, she was facing substantial obstacles in her training. Not only was Changing Star completely new to that aspect of her power, she also simply had too much soul essence. Compared to normal master, she had at least 5 times as much of it. If most ascended contained a tranquil current of essence within their bodies, Nephi's contained a furious sea. Her soul essence was also different from anything Sunny had ever faced. It was much more potent, fiery, and vibrant, probably because of the fire attribute she had inherited from her mother. What it effectively meant was that Neph would have to put much more effort into learning to control her essence. However, once she did climb over that steep obstacle, the result was going to be simply terrifying. Showing her the way put Sunny's own experiences in perspective, gifting him a few new insights of his own. Just as it had been with Rain, the role of a mentor allowed him to learn a lot himself. Teaching was truly the best way to learn. Now, Sunny felt that his own essence control was far more precise and nuanced than that of most, even without the help of Soul's Serpent. Of course, he had no chance to test it in actual combat yet. He was also growing more and more sour about the fact that both Blood Weave and Bone Weave were purely corporeal in nature. Although Shadow Essence was unique, it did not receive any augmentation from his attributes. In fact, the only time its strange nature played a role had been during his encounter with the vile thieving bird Spawn. Even though that single instance had saved his life, Sunny really wished for more. Maybe I am not utilizing its full potential. If there was a way to do so, however, he had no idea how. Maybe if Weaver's lineage had not devoured the shadow gods, Sunny would have been in a different situation. As it stood, though, I wonder if there is a soul weave. Nephi sighed and opened her eyes. The turbulent flow of soul essence in her body settled, returning to a calmer cycle. She rested for a moment and then rose to her feet. Sunny did the same, commanding the 4 shadows to wrap themselves around his body. "Are you ready?" She nodded and then exploded in motion, attacking him with her fists. Empowered by the shadows, Sunny easily dodged, deflected, and blocked the torrent of devastating punches and kicks. This was the second part of their training. Nephi's not only had to learn how to control soul essence, but also how to use it in battle. She had to retrain herself from the ground up to account for all the new possibilities that the ascension granted her. This was not an easy task, considering that the difference went much deeper than simple physical ability and explosive might. At their high level, combat became much more tactical. Soul essence was a precious resource that could achieve a lot, but was also easily wasted. A master had to be strategic in how they unleashed their powers. Their physical performance, aspect, and memories could all benefit from vast amounts of essence. However, they could also quickly deplete it. The same statement held true for awakened, but to a much lesser degree, since masters had much greater powers at their disposal, and thus could exert much greater volumes of soul essence. It was a constant and complicated dance that required a lot of skill, foresight, and cunning to be performed to the best result. Sunny himself still had a lot to learn. Serving as a bona fide punching bag for Nephi's was not the most efficient way of learning, but it had its own merits. By dedicating himself to nothing but withstanding a constant barrage of attacks and rationing his essence in the most efficient way, Sunny was teaching himself how to prepare for long battles of attrition. At least she had mastered essence control enough to not ruin the dojo. For a while, the underground chamber was filled with nothing but the sounds of heavy breathing and flesh hitting flesh. Both fighters were exerting themselves to the utmost degree. Sunny had it easier since he was defending, but receiving so many crushing blows in a row was still not for the weak of heart. Each of Neff's essence-empowered strikes could have punched through an armored vehicle, after all. If not for the fact that she was not using her flames to augment herself, Sunny would have been suffering from internal bleeding by now. Having nearly indestructible bones was a big advantage, but it did not make him invincible. Their furious clash lasted until Nephi's exhausted most of her essence. Determined to launch one last attack, she stepped closer. Her slender leg whipped forward, threatening to crush Sunny's ribcage. He swiftly turned and caught it in the air, then gently placed it on the ground. That's enough for today. Since this had been their routine for the entirety of the last week, neither said another word. Both fell to the floor, spent and utterly exhausted. Their breathing was hoarse and their clothes were soaked with sweat. Damn, I need a shower. However, the idea of standing up seemed too cruel right now. Sunny turned his head to glance at Nephi's and judged that she was in an even more pitiful state. So, they simply remained on the floor for a few minutes, laying side by side and trying to catch their breath. After a while, Sunny's communicator suddenly made a sound. Of course, it was not on his person. A clash of such intensity would have quickly destroyed the expensive device, so Sunny had left it on the lid of the Dreamscape pod. Now, he faced the necessity to walk all the way to the alcove to retrieve it. Instead, Sunny commanded the happy shadow to glide there, turn tangible, pick up the communicator and bring it back. The fool was utterly delighted to oblige anyway. As the shadow gingerly crossed the underground dojo and presented the communicator to Sunny, he glanced at the screen and then sighed. Time to go, Neff. Cassie is on her way. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down. Our target is to get 1K subscriber. There will be surprise for all of you. Stay tuned.